Hello, everybody. Welcome to Most Wanted Topics. I'm your host, Kevin Dennison. Along with me, Atomic Tommy. We are broadcasting to you live from our studios here at Most Wanted Comics here in beautiful Bloomington, Minnesota. Atomic Tommy, the game is in the books. It's over. The big game is in the books, officially over. And your thoughts?
Initial thought is I need to turn you down. You're really loud. So I'm just going to reach over here. All right, there we go. Thoughts on the big game, though.
The big game.
Wow. Kansas City won. We wanted Kansas City to win, but they did not deserve it. They played like ass. That game...
It's a harsh critic.
I mean, that game... Well, it's like... Watching that game was infuriating. Because I'm watching them, and they're just making such dumb decisions.
No, I'm going to tell you this, folks. This is
Like,
Tommy. This is Tommy's first year he's actually into sports. So it was his first year watching football.
I mean, obviously, the Chiefs are a good team. They won. But what were some of those play calls, man? Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Why do we keep running the ball? I don't understand.
Andy Reid likes to establish the run. I tell you what. Now, I will tell you this. It was definitely a battle of two heavyweight defenses, which in a Super Bowl, now granted, the Super Bowl was kind of boring until the last quarter. Okay, yeah. The fourth quarter was good. The overtime was great. Mahomes did his thing, proving why Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league right now, because Mahomes is Mahomes. But I tell you what, those defenses, both San Francisco and Kansas City, are two great defenses. And with the way the league is, with the rules favoring the offense so much, it was refreshing to see a defensive battle. That secondary for Kansas City is lights out. They are an unbelievable secondary. Purdy was poised. He was making great passes. And Kansas City secondary was unbelievable. And San Francisco's front four, not having to blitz all the time, being able to control Mahomes in the pocket for most of the game, and being able to stop the run, the Kansas City run, which Andy Reid loves the run, and he used the run pass option. I tell you what, it was a battle of two heavyweight defenses. It was a good football game. There were some questionable calls. Obviously, Kelsey got into it with Andy Reid early on. What and then because they won, of course, it won the game. So because they won the game, it was no big deal. But there was some frustration in the play calling, and I just think the Niners probably deserve to win that game more than the Chiefs. Cowher said it best at halftime. You know, when the run isn't working, you have to go to the short passes because that's as effective as a 5-yard run, and then that offsets what you're doing if your run is stopped. It's like you're running the ball, except you're just doing dink and dunk, dink and dunk, dink and dunk, and they should have done more of that early on because it was effective for Kansas City. But you know what? Andy Reid is a great coach. I don't question him. He is who he is. They're a young team. They were capped by salary because of Mahomes and Kelsey. They have great players. They're a young team, but their defense was still great. In San Francisco, yeah, they had some. McCaffrey deserved to win. I mean, he carried that team on his back. Kittle didn't show up. Oh, he blocked a lot, but I mean, he didn't really have a big game. But yeah, all in all, Swifties were happy. Taylor Swift was happy.
The Swifties were happy.
The bottom line is Swift didn't play her greatest game, but they pulled it out.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying. Obviously, the Chiefs are a good team.
Offensively, it wasn't Mahomes' greatest performance, but at the end of the game, he proved why he's an MVP.
As somebody who, this is really my first, as Dad says, really my first year paying attention to football, and from that perspective, Kansas City didn't look that great last night.
They didn't look their best. No,
they didn't really look. And I was expecting a better performance from them, but that's okay.
But just keep in mind they're playing a really good defense.
Yeah, but
they're playing a really, really, really good defense. Bosa is no joke. I mean, they're just a great defense.
Even their defense though took a minute to kick in. It took
Kansas City. It took Kansas City a little while to find their game, but Kansas City's Kansas City. I mean, they've had those moments during the season where we didn't even think they were gonna start going downhill. They weren't even gonna make the playoffs.
Yeah,
and then they proved who they were. And you know what? It comes down to Mahomes is just a great quarterback, great leader. Their coaching staff is bar none. I mean, their defensive coordinator, from all their special coaches to their main coach, Kansas City is a well-coached football team. and their players play like a team, and they're all together, and that's a big deal. So,
I think that's ultimately what makes them. Well, like you said, that's what makes them such a great team.
It makes them a great team. They're going to show, and when it counted at the very end, look at Kelsey erupted. All of a sudden, like 3 catches in a row, got him down to scoring position, and he carried 3 players on his back to a first down, and then they were first and goal, and they won the game.
Yep, they definitely have some of the most talented players in the league. Yeah, and they show up when it counts. So.
Yeah, but was it their best game? I agree with you. Some of their running plays were frustrating because their run was just ineffective.
Yeah.
And it was frustrating, but Andy Reid wanted to keep establishing that just to make sure. I don't know what the hell he was thinking. I would have dunked it the whole way through and run Mahomes. But either way, I'm not the coach for a reason. That's why he gets the big bucks and I don't. But anyway, let's talk comic shop for a little while. Hey, on the 17th, make sure you stop by the shop. Brent Schoonover, good friend of Most Wanted Comics, will be here. Doing some sketches, limited amount of sketches, so make sure you get here early to get but he'll have some sketch cards, he'll have some prints, he'll have some shirts. Our friend Brent Schoonover will be here on the 17th, so make sure that you stop by the shop and say hi to our friend and awesome comic artist, Brent Schoonover. What else do we have coming up, Tommy? We got some big things going on in the store.
We have Tom Cook in April.
Oh, that's right, Tom Cook in April 13th. And then March 16th, New Pain production team. We'll have Keith Champagne in the house.
Yep, we'll be doing an interview with them.
Yeah, and Keith Champagne will probably be doing an interview before they come out with the New Pain team, kind of prepping what they're going to be doing. So we'll be anxious to talk to them in an interview, which you're going to do before they come out on the 16th of March. So that'll be cool. Anyway, let's talk comic books. What came out this past week, what you liked, what you didn't like, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I read Mace Windu. I told you guys I was going to read Mace Windu. It was fine. It was pretty run-of-the-mill. It's just the first issue. This is one of those times where they're really starting slow, I think. They're not going too overboard on the first issue, which, they're playing it safe, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I'm hoping that they do more with Mace Windu. I'm hoping the story gets to be a little bit more than just, we need to retrieve this female and this, element that she has or whatever it was. And I'm hoping that it's I don't know. I just hope the story becomes a little bit more. I hope they do Mace Windu a little more. I hope we see a little bit more of Mace Windu as a character, because I didn't really get that in this first issue. But it was okay. Nonetheless, I'll keep reading it. And then Ultimate Black Panther. That book sucked. That was terrible.
Suck alert.
I got permission to mention our good loyal friend at Most Wanted Comics customer, Jim Seuss.
Ooh, the Seusser.
The Seusser. Yep, we were talking about it.
Jimmy the Sousa.
Jimmy the I don't know if he likes that name.
I don't know. We didn't ask him.
We didn't ask him, but we probably should have asked him first. But we were talking. He did not like that book either, and we got to talking about why. Because this book it's another one of those books that's really pricey now. I think it's running still about $40 on eBay.
Is it really?
Yeah, it might have been like 30. I don't know. I haven't looked it up in a while. I don't really care, to be honest with you. But the only reason why it's like that is because of Ultimate Spider-Man. And Ultimate Spider-Man was a good book. I liked Ultimate Spider-Man. A lot of people liked Ultimate Spider-Man because it was different.
Yeah, I think people appreciate it because Amazing Spider-Man sucks so bad coming in.
Amazing Spider-Man does suck. It was refreshing. It wasn't, it wasn't changing the status quo per se. He was still with Mary Jane, but it's just a refreshing. It was just a refreshing read. It was a good read. Ultimate Black Panther was not that. It was boring. There were some really glaring technical errors and the writing, and the art was okay, but it just was really flawed all the way through. It was boring. It was run of the mill. It's just your standard Black Panther story. They didn't do anything to try and mix it up. They didn't do anything to try and make it different. And I think that's a big flaw, especially when we're dealing with out-of-canon storytelling like the Ultimate Universe. It's a really big opportunity for them to do new things and to try new things with these characters. And for them to not do that with Black Panther, I think it's kind of a waste. Yes, he's fighting Moon Knight. That's all fine and good. But if you really look, at what the story is, I don't know. It's just
there's not much there.
It was just kind of mid.
Mid?
Mid.
Is that what they call it now? Mid?
It was just mid.
It was just mid. Okay. So what else is
So
there?
that was a flop. Thundercats was also kind of a flop. I'm not gonna lie. We're gonna get Mafu in to talk about that because I'm sure he has some things to say.
I'm sure. You know what? I'm gonna step aside. You guys are gonna talk about that and what's gonna come out next week, and then I'll be back here to help you wrap it up.
Yep.
All right. Sounds good. We'll bring in the Mighty Mafu.
All right, Matthew. Let's talk about Thundercats before I give my full opinion. I'm gonna let you go first.
All right. There were a couple parts I thought were interesting to me. One was how they introduced Mumra. Mumra was awakened by the power of the Sword of Omens when Lionel sees some bad guys and he calls down the sword to warn the other Thundercats. And I thought it was cool how he says, "It awakes me." Like, it just wakes him up for some reason. I mean, that I felt that was kind of odd because in the cartoon he was just there. Like, he was there on Third Earth just waiting. No. I mean, he was a mummy. Mm-hmm. And, just asleep. And now he has to be awakened by, like, the Sword of Omens. Why? I mean, he should have just been alive and just waiting to find somebody to kill. And another one, this was the big one for me. They broke the Sword of Omens. And they broke it into a million pieces, probably. And, the main villain, Slithe, he's a lizard from Thundera. He just took up his axe after he kicked Lionel on the ground. He's like, "Now you die." And then Lionel blocks it, but in that doing, the Sword of Omen breaks, which I think that's stupid because it is a magical sword, so hence it should be indestructible and not be breakable. I mean, if it's magic, then there should be some sort of magical barrier protecting it. Sure. It shouldn't just be a plain old sword that can just be broken in half. No, this is a magic sword. It should be indestructible.
Yeah. Like
vibranium or adamantium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Indestructible.
He was mad about the sword, if you couldn't tell. I think that struck a little bit home. Anything else?
No, those were the two main things.
Okay. Well, for me, here's the thing. I don't know anything about Thundercats. That show was, not to date anybody, way before my time. So, and I was never really one growing up to really watch the 80s cartoons like my brother is over here. My brother, you love to watch the old 80s cartoons. I never really was like that. I never really went back and watched the old stuff or really enjoyed watching the old stuff, Not that I didn't like it or anything. I just never did that. So for me, Thundercats was never really not something I know about, just like Transformers or G.I. Joe. I knew nothing about really the 80s era of those franchises. Obviously, with Transformers, I had the movies and stuff, but
yeah,
it was just, for me, ultimately these sort of 80s callback, vintage comics, what they need to do is obviously pertain and advertise to their target audience, which are older people who grew up with Thundercats, right? Obviously. But what they also need to do is they need to find a way to work in so that new readers, like myself, young readers, can read it. That needs to be, I think, the ultimate goal for every legacy comic, in Marvel. It's, be faithful and respect what came before and those who have been reading for a long time and keep them invested, but also find ways to bring new people into the fold, because that's how this business grows, right? You can't, you can't keep, writing for the same people forever. Eventually those people are going to lose interest. Eventually those people aren't going to be here to read what you have to say. So you have to keep building out the generation and keep building out the company. And Transformers and G.I. Joe did that really well. They managed to hook a lot of people who maybe were too young to watch Transformers when it was out in the 80s, or maybe like myself weren't alive when that show was out. Though they were really good at keeping it faithful, keeping it to the original, but also keeping it new, fresh, and open for really anybody of any generation to read. ThunderCats, again, not knowing anything about it, just didn't have that, like, it didn't grip me. It wasn't interesting to me. I wasn't invested. I didn't want to keep reading ThunderCats. In fact, it was to the point where I almost I had to stop reading and come back. Usually I don't do that with comics, but with ThunderCats it was just boring. I felt like I was missing something. I felt like I was just not it just wasn't for me very clearly, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I'm not going to read it, because it's just I just don't like it. It just wasn't. It didn't have that factor of interest. It didn't have that thing that, for lack of a better term, that a comic needs, I think, for me. So,
yeah. Unlike Transformers.
If you guys know what I'm trying to say, it's hard to articulate, but it just was kind of boring.
Yeah.
For me personally,
I thought it was decent, but
yeah, I mean, and it's not that it was necessarily a terrible comic.
It wasn't Amazing Spider-Man.
it tried to be like Transformers. I think it tried to capture ThunderCats and that sort of section of the 80s, and I just don't think it worked.
Right, because it didn't have that grip on like Transformers #1 did, where it just here's a backstory and everything.
Transformers, it really roped you in, and it was really interesting. But yeah, I think we'll stop it there. I think that's a good place to end this review of ThunderCats. That's just our opinion, though.
Yeah,
everybody's entitled to one. Let me know what you think. Matthew, are you going to keep reading it?
I might, just to see what happens with the sword and just see what happens about, how they're going to build the cat's lair and how they're going to bring Mumra in as the big baddie and have Slythe as one of his minions. I think that'll be cool to see if they do it. If they don't, then I'm going to quit reading it and just keep reading Transformers. I
think it's safe to say that I will not be reading it going forward.
Good point.
I will be sticking to Transformers and G.I. Joe. Sorry, Dynamite, which I'm pretty sure was the producer or the publisher on that.
Yes, you
Dynamite.
Were correct. Dynamite.
You just lost me on this one. So, with that, I think we will bring Dad back to wrap things up.
All right.
So ThunderCats did not ring anybody's bell too much, but that's okay. We're gonna keep going give her a couple of issues and see what happens. But what can you say? You can't win. You can't win everyone. And I was a fan of ThunderCats in the 80s when it came out. But that being said, we've covered that one. That's good. So 17th, Brent Schoonover. Then in March and April, Tom Cook. March we have Keith Champagne and the New Pain production team. And we'll have another announcement coming up hopefully next week. Remember, Wednesday is Valentine's Day. If you're not a Most Wanted Maniac, you get 10% off your purchases that day. Or if you're a Maniac, you get bumped up from your 12% discount to 15% off that day.
That is true. You know what we forgot to do? I didn't tell you guys what was coming out this week.
Oh, that's right. What do we have to look forward to on Valentine's Day?
Well, a lot, actually. Transformers #5. We were just talking about it. Got to keep you guys in the loop. Transformers #5 comes out. DC Action Comics 1062, the continuation of Jason Aaron on Superman. That'll be pretty cool. Or Action Comics, more specifically. Switching over to Marvel, Scarlet Witch and the Quicksilver #1. That'll be, it's #1. It'll be an interesting little miniseries. We'll see where that goes. Also, Night Thrasher #1, possibly the biggest one of the week. 90s classic returns. The New Warriors standout comes back.
New Warriors,
Night Thrasher #1. That'll be a big one. Also, I figured I'd mention it. Amazing Spider-Man 43. That one,
it is what it is.
They went on a bit of a break, but they're back.
All right, so everyone, hopefully we'll have a big announcement next week to make. Otherwise, everyone keep reading those comics. Make sure you smash the like button and subscribe to this if you like what you're seeing so far. Again, shout outs to Matt, JD, Jesse, Sharon, Jeff, and Mark, and of course Jimmy the Souser. We'll see you guys next week, everybody.